everybody. Welcome back to Untamed Terrain. This is episode number 5.
Episode number 5 of Traversing Life's Chaos. So we've kind of, as our families has blended and gotten together, we've seen the effects of our children being in front of the screen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we want to kind of talk about our views on how we're going to mediate that and what we think it's the issues that it's brought up with them as kids and teenagers, and how it's affected some of their decisions, some of the things that have happened to them, and what that role of social media has played. And in our lives as well, in our professional lives, and how we handle our addiction to the phone.
Right, exactly. It's interesting. We have a large family, as you know, large blended family, and we recently had to instill a rule, which is no phones at the dinner table. I mean,
Right.
Gathering around, 6 teenagers and a tween to get to the dinner table is hard enough as it is with jobs and stuff, but to have them constantly looking at their phones, we view dinner time as an opportunity to actually connect to one another. And, we leave our phones off the table. So the kids didn't take too kindly to our edict, though, did they?
Well, I think they felt attacked, as any teenager would, and as anyone who hasn't learned how to deal with their defensiveness and their reactions to life's problems. I don't think it was a giant issue at our dinner table to where they were eating and on their phones, but as they finished dinner, they'd start to pull out their phones and look below the table, because they knew we had taught them enough that they knew it was wrong to be on the phone while you're at the table. But did we set any ground rules, as we've talked about in the past? No, we didn't. So yeah, we had to go back and say, all right, you guys, just leave your phone over there on the counter. You can sit here for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it is, while we sit and talk, and whether it's about the day's events, about stories you had at school, about things that we're going to do this weekend, have some interaction with each other and talk about things with each other. We don't have to be the ringleader here as far as the conversation goes between the two of us. We want you guys to talk to each other, and it's worked out. Like they do spend some time. It's hard to get a word in at our table, regardless.
Oh yeah.
I mean, once they get started, it's just one jumbled, loud,
hilarious
laughing
most of the time. Yeah.
Fighting going on. It's typical of what happens with any family. But
right. Well, I want us to touch a little bit on social media and our own feelings about it and our own experience of it, because I will say, by and large, social media is not a scourge. It's not something that's terrible. I think in a lot of ways it's broadened our communities and it's broadened our horizons, and it's definitely increased our access to information, which is really good.
Yeah.
It can be a little scary. We're starting to learn history different than what we were taught. That's a big thing that's happened in my family, just because, we're not always taught in school what the true history is, but there's the speed of information, which is great. However, there's also, there's a dark side of social media. And I think any parent has seen that. I mean, you've heard it from your kids. You've seen it on the news. You've got, these TikTok challenges that end up causing bodily harm to either the person doing it or other people, up into death, and there's been a lot of backlash that hasn't been great about social media. So I kind of want to touch on that and, our experience about what to watch for and how to help your kids navigate their access to information like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting watching the evolution of this, because as a Gen Xer, grew up in a world where there was no internet, and all of a sudden there was, and all of a sudden there's access to everything that you could think possible, and to bringing that into a mobile computer that you carry around in your pocket all day, and the kids have complete access to everything. And once social media came about, I still wasn't a part of that because I was kind of older. I was out of college before Facebook kind of took hold, and us older people weren't allowed on Facebook. And then as that became access to things, it was nice to, as my experience with it, I can't speak for you, to catch up with people that I went to junior high school with, that I went to grade school with. I'm like, holy crap, they still look the same, or wow, they're doing this. And yes, it was a false front to what their real lives might have been, and we didn't think about that at the time, but it was a cool tool to use to catch up with people you haven't seen in a while. And I think with my generation, it was nice to have that. It was really great to catch up with people that I had played sports with. But watching it evolve, and then Instagram came along, you start to use it as a crutch after a while. I know in my early years of that, I just sit there and stare at the phone, and watching our kids grow up with that access their whole lives, and how TikTok and all these other pages and websites that are apps, whatever it might be, that have come along, and watching them grow up with that, it's scary to know that a lot of their information and false information has come from what they see in a 15-second reel. And how they're perceived to their friends and people outside of their friend group on social media. Absolutely. Because that's really their that really defines who they are. Right. In their mind. Right. As we know, as parents and people closest to them, that's not who they are. They're a outgoing, fun, pretty enthusiastic kid. And they may seem that way on social media, but there's a lot of judgment that comes along with that.
There really is. And I think you hit on something really important when you were starting to talk about this, that there's what you see, and being able to think, okay, well, this one glamorous picture, this family vacation to Hawaii, the Louis Vuitton bag that she carries, that we seem to think that that's somebody's reality, when the truth of the matter is, it's not. And it's really hard for a child especially, and I use the term child as in, anybody who's not living an adult life and paying their own bills. It's really hard for a child to be able to say, okay, what I'm seeing is not real. There is a whole other story behind this 15-second clip that is this person. And, I think one of the things that social media has done is it's set a standard that is almost impossible for anybody to rise to. And it's not just with kids. I mean, as a mom, I see it. And I'm sure the moms who are watching this video or listening to this podcast have seen it. You've got these women who, they seem to have their crap together. They're baking bread while carrying their baby in a Baby Bjorn on their $30,000 stove. And y'all know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this. You know who she is. Anyway, they want that life, and they think, I'll never have it because my counters are never clean. Because I don't have marble countertops. Mine are Formica. Because I have a stupid kitchen sink that is white porcelain, and it is always dirty no matter how much I scrub it with baking soda and lemon juice. But, if you see me making gingerbread, you're not seeing, the torn linoleum in my bathroom or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here is that, and it's something I preached when I was in the restaurant business at every pre-shift, was like, perception's reality, people. And what people perceive of you and what people perceive of others on social media is exactly what they're going to get. When you walk into that door of a restaurant and you see, some rice on the floor and things tucked away in the corners and, spots on dishes, you're like, well, this restaurant's dirty. You walk into that restaurant and it's sparkly clean and everything's perfect and silverware's polished and everything's exactly as it should be. I'm in the right place. Well, social media kind of leads to that sparkly, beautiful, well-polished silverware world that everyone wants to live in.
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite, too, where they're getting terrible ideas of things that others perceive as being funny and that are doing harm to other kids, teenagers, people in general.
Absolutely. You've got TikTok out there, and you've got these dances that, who knows why, but to music that is probably inappropriate. And you've got, young girls doing these TikTok dances and lip syncing these lyrics, and it's making these little girls look like, or not even little girls even. I mean, we don't even have to talk about tweens. We can talk about teenagers.
And other older moms.
And oh my gosh, let's not even go with the mutton dressed like sheep, but or mutton dressed like lamb. But you know, you've got these girls that are doing this because it's popular to do, but they're not thinking about the message you just sent to an entire audience.
Back to the perception as reality.
Is not who you really are, but that's what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, is going to start rumors around the school about you. And
yeah, so our view on that as parents, and that's who we want to hopefully get across to, is that you got to find a way to control what they do. You can't control them 100% of the time because we'll never be able to do that. But having those tough conversations of what we've talked about in prior episodes is being upfront with them. And hey, look, this is what it looks like. This is how what people are going to think of you.
And is this underscoring your values and the values we have as a family?
And so being able to have those hard conversations with them early hopefully breeds and relieves them of any issues they might have growing up as later on in their early 20s and avoid the mistakes that you and I have made and we've talked about in the past. But yeah, with social media, once you put it out there, it's there. You know, it doesn't go away. And that's something that we've tried to talk to our kids about. And I think everyone has tried to talk to their kids about, and those advocating for a safer place for them is to completely remove them from social media until they're late teens, maybe even adults. But that's almost impossible nowadays.
Not only is it impossible, but I don't know that it's necessarily a good idea because, like I said earlier, there's a lot of information out there, you know, and it's okay to be entertained. I know that there's like a whole movement about Instagram is manufactured dopamine. You know what? Life gets hard. And sometimes you just need to laugh at stupid dog videos. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, you know, it's interesting. And this is probably a little bit of a tangent, but I was raised LDS, and I was very LDS for a long time. And I ended up falling away from the church. And it was because one of the big reasons was because no matter how good I was never going to be good enough. No matter how much tithing I paid, I wasn't paying as much as somebody else. No matter how big my fast offerings were, somebody else was giving more. No matter how many times I went to the temple, somebody was going to the temple more. And so, you know, I was really kind of raised in a very guilt-laden life. And it took me to get a little bit older to be like, hey, you know what? We need to cut ourselves a break. So I want to impress upon anybody who's listening or watching, and kids too, that social media isn't all bad. I think what it is being able to impart a reality check with social media and its use.
Yeah, and I think the reality check is huge because whatever you're into and whatever you're pursuing is going to be elevated to the nth degree on social media, on Instagram and even on TikTok. I don't know. I'm not on TikTok. So
I'm not on TikTok either, but I'm not cool. I'm old.
But what's out there, you know, might physically be what you're looking for, whether it's in a partner or a house or a life that you want to live. But getting them to believe that that's not always going to be there, like at the snap of a finger by, hey, do these 5 steps and guess what? You can be a millionaire next month. And I think that's where some of the kids get lost in. Like they lost in this fantasy of, yeah, I can be a millionaire. I can do this in 3 months and that's all it takes.
All I have to do is hack the algorithm.
Right.
And I'm set for life.
And I can have this model. I can have this perfect house. I can have this Lamborghini. And it's like, as parents, that's part of the reality check that you just mentioned, is that giving them that reality check and making them get outside and get their hands dirty and do work and appreciate the hard work that building a foundation, building your life, the foundation of your life is going to give them, you know, instead of, yeah, they're fine. They're, you know, the computer or the phone's not doing much to them anyway. They're going to find a good job. It's a constant battle to really balance the two, of giving them an idea of what it takes to get the work done and also a little bit of freedom to scroll through mindlessly and get a little lost in that cyber world.
Right.
But I think most kids can't figure out the difference between the two.
Right.
So they tend to lean towards what's easy.
Oh yeah.
They tend to lean towards, well, I'll just sit on my phone. I'll play this game. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, we took the kids out to
Well, let's talk about that in a minute,
yeah.
because I kind of want to get into a couple of things. First of all, one of the dangers of social media is that kids are not able to carry on a conversation, a give and take conversation like they used to, like we were raised to do. It's, in my experience, it is a rarity to come across somebody who is in their teenage years, millennial. Well, maybe not millennial, but this new gen. What is it, Gen Z? I don't know. I don't with the generations.
Why?
That's because I was born in 81 and I'm a lost generation. I don't even know where I belong. But, this new generation, getting them to carry on a conversation, by and large, is really difficult. The give and take is lost, and it's because, you can't use emojis in real life. Like, you actually, have to interact. And, the other thing is that has to go with, conversations and emojis is you really, other than emojis, you can't convey tone over text. And so it's really easy to misinterpret the way a message gets sent, just on the airwaves. It's really difficult. But I know what you were talking about, and I want to get into that, is the whole situation with boredom. When my kids were younger, before social media became a thing, before having a cell phone at 8 years old was just the way to go, when they would come to me and tell me they were bored, my go-to response was, don't make your boredom my problem, or I'm going to put you to work. And so they weren't. And one of the things I love about your kids is you and their mother have been really, really good about disconnecting them and having them find ways to be on board.
Yeah, I think giving them crafts, and that was part of the reason we landed back in Phoenix, is that they go to a Waldorf-inspired school, which is everything about building a child from the inside. So their view on technology is like, it's extreme, and I see that because our kids didn't have a gaming console until I think 2 years ago, and the twins are now almost 17. So, we kind of set the fact that, like, all right, they'll get a cell phone when they're 12, because it kind of they get into junior high and they start to get a little more independent. They start to go places with their friends. So yeah, I wanted that, I wanted to be able to use that tool to say, okay, now I can get a hold of them. Now I can look on my phone and see exactly where their phones are, and not as a control piece, but as like a peace of mind. And that's something that
keeping tabs on your kids is not controlling your kids.
No.
Knowing where your children are is not control, okay? That is
But that's
common
the thing,
sense
in our generation, and we're getting away from social media, but in our generation, we were gone, and literally, and it's such a cliche, but we were gone from the time we left the house in the morning till the lights came on. We were out in the desert jumping or making ramps and jumping friends and like building hideaways and
doing stupid stuff that didn't get
stupid
caught
stuff
on
that, like,
cell phone
how are we
cameras.
still alive? And I guess with social media, we know where our kids are because they're inside on their phone,
Right.
and it's like,
But it's interesting because kids these days, if they have a cell phone, they don't get bored, because it's like you scroll through Facebook. Okay, sorry, kids don't use Facebook. You scroll through TikTok and you get sick of watching TikTok videos. And so you're like, I'm bored of TikTok. So I'm just going to open up Instagram. Oh, let's watch some reels on people getting hit by cars, because that's a thing on Instagram. I'm sick of watching people get hit by cars. So, I know I want to make slime. Let's go on YouTube. And then they fall down. Oh, well, I started with slime, but now I'm into, making cinnamon rolls on YouTube. And so kids are not able to actually get bored. The answer to their boredom is in their hand. But what they're not doing is they're not going outside. They're not getting creative anymore. Maybe they're getting creative with like content creation, but even then, there's no immediate payoff. So why, and so they're not allowing themselves to get bored so that they can really tap into creativity. And geez, don't get me started on literature. Like, do kids even read anymore? I mean, I know that they're not taught cursive anymore in class.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the things we focused on, is raising the kids. I mean, they read the Harry Potter series, I think 3 times over, all 8 books. I don't know how many there are. But that was, and I think watching that transformation for me and my kids is watching that transformation from them getting away from reading to like being on their phones all the time. And that was, it was frustrating, but at least I knew that foundation was there for them. They had an appreciation of reading a good book and having satisfaction of read the book and knowing what it's about, and then go to watch a movie and they're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Whereas they didn't look it up on the internet. They didn't look it up. They didn't watch the movie to get the context of why, you know, I can't even remember the characters and the why so-and-so did this.
Clearly you're a Potterhead.
I'm not, yeah. Anyway, but we kind of got sidetracked about them getting bored and our answers to that. Like, what are we doing to give them a release other than that immediate gratification that this generation is so stuck on?
Right.
Like, I want to be happy, so I'm going to open this and it's going to make me happy. And I think we can go there now. I think watching them and just giving them an opportunity to be outside, they find a way to make themselves happy if you give them that option.
Yeah.
Because we did take them to our new ranch this past weekend or a few weekends ago, and let them just be kids. Let them get out. Yes, they had cell service, but they really weren't stuck on their phones. They were happy cutting wood, using their hands, exploring this unknown land to them. It literally is an untamed terrain where we're at. You know, we're starting from zero. There's no utilities. There's nothing out there. And
just 40 acres of raw land.
Yeah, and watching them, hey, we found this abandoned trailer over here. I think it's on our property. Can we go look at it?
And then making up a story about what happened in the abandoned trailer.
Yeah, they made up this story that someone had gotten murdered there because we didn't see it. We will see
that
it.
It was a bear attack, but there's no bears out there, I don't think so.
It's on the property just adjacent to us that, you know, no one owns, I believe, but they may have and left this trailer there. So they made up a story of how someone got attacked there and there was blood on the sheets, and, you know, they got creative. They used the creative side of their mind.
It was a little warped, but it was creative.
But whatever. You know, it got them out and it got them thinking and it got them exploring. You know, and they have airsoft guns. They have things like that. So they set up competitions and they set up targets with each other, and they just found a way to interact without being connected to social media. Being
unplugged. And it was fun because, you know, my daughter she's the only girl, and she's a very girly girl. I mean, that's not to say she's not tough. She's got a lot of brothers, so she can hold her own, but she doesn't like to do much for herself. And, you know, I probably give into that. I mean, you moms of daughters out there, you may hear me on this. I want to make things easy on her. I don't want her to hate me. And so I'm a little easy on her, and a little too easy. But, you know, she got out there and we were building a fire pit and she wanted to dig the hole. Bless her heart. Yeah. She does not know how to use a shovel.
I couldn't pry the shovel out of her hands for at least a good 15 minutes.
She put on her cute little pink gardening gloves and she started digging. And, you know, it was funny because the older boys, one of them was using the chainsaw for the first time, which was awesome. You taught my son how to use a chainsaw. They'd never used things like that before. And there was an axe up there that they were, you know, chopping firewood with. And, you know, the next day they were happy too. There was not any complaints. There was a lot of laughter, and they weren't fighting. They each found what they wanted to do with their time, and they did it. And it was so good for them to get out there. And the next day, you know, we went back to the Airbnb we were renting in Heber, and the next morning they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sore, but it's so good. Like it's the kind of sore that when you put in a really good day at the gym and, you know, your shoulders are hurting and you can't stand up when you sit down, you know, that kind of sore. And I asked them, I said, you know, the sore, is it good? And they liked it.
Yeah. And it was fun to watch them be themselves, be kids for once, and not be tied to a gaming console, not be tied to their phones. Now, granted, when we got back to the house that night, that's probably the first thing they did, but it was a break in this false world that's out there. And then it's not all false, but this immediate gratification they get, they had to work for that, you know, that whole day. They had to work for seeing this tree that's so broad and dead. Yes, let's cut it down, to dwindling it down to just a stump. And I think them seeing the results of the manual labor that they did kind of switched things over for them for a bit. It gave them a little sense of pride and like, yeah, I helped build that fire pit. Yeah, I helped cut that tree down. Or yeah, I shot. You know, we were able to shoot the 22 on the land. I made it dead center bullseye. You know, it was the pieces that they were able to work for and then physically see and not push a button. And so not everyone's going to have the opportunity to take a mountain into a ranch. And this is something that you and I, and we'll get into it in a different episode, that you and I had agreed upon, that we need this. You know, we need to give our kids a legacy. We need to give something that they can carry on, because you and I didn't have that. And I think we've talked about that in a prior episode. But giving them the opportunity to get away from that phone and that gaming console for a day was priceless for us, because they were able to just kind of sit back and see the fruits of their labor.
Yeah.
But not everybody has that option. So we as a work in progress need to find something close to home that they can do.
Well, you know, one of the things I want to point out, and this kind of segues into a conversation we had. I mean, we could go on about social media forever. We're getting kind of long here, but, you know, we had a conversation around the dinner table last week around something that was going on. And I'm not going to say what the trend was, but the youngest of the kids, he kind of sits at my end of the dinner table, and it's a long dinner table. We fit 13 people on it. So it's probably 15, 16 feet end to end. Close. It's a long table. Yeah. But he sits close to my end, and he said to me, you know, it may have just been a meme, but now it's put that idea into other people's heads. And that's kind of, you know, one of the worries of social media is these ideas that are not necessarily wholesome are now being broadcast on a bigger scale. And so, you know, you've got that whole, well, working with their hands is wholesome, and they have that sense of pride and ownership in the tree they cut down, the firewood pile that they built, the fire pit that they dug and masoned. You know, you've got that sense of pride, and they're all wholesome and healthy sources of pride, you know. But on social media, what you have is likes. You have these imaginary thumbs ups or hearts, and it's like, what are you willing to do for that, so that you get somebody else's approval? Somebody else is liking what you're doing, but is it really internal? Are you really proud of that? Or are you getting your sense of well-being and self-esteem from somebody else?
And I think our goal here for you and for our kids is not to bash social media and not to use it as a negative concept, because what we're doing with this podcast, it's going to be advertised on social media. We're going to use it on Instagram and YouTube and these different channels to bring you these ideas. But we want to teach the kids some responsibility and some reality in the fact that not everything happens at a click of a button. And, you know, the success that they see in their lives is going to be a direct result of the work that they put in, and not the idea that somebody can say, well, buy this thing for $299 and you're going to be, like I said prior, you're going to be a millionaire in 3 months. You know, are there things out there and chances that could happen? Yes. But I think for them to have a little perception into their own lives, rather, you know, than somebody else perceiving them a certain way, we want them to be able to build their lives based on truth and hard work, rather than, hey, this is what I look like on Instagram. Follow me.
With filters.
You know.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. We probably could go on about this, and don't be surprised if there's another episode down the road. But thank you for joining us for this episode. And, you know, we want engagement from you. If you have comments, questions, concerns, if we are completely off base and you want to tell us how wrong we are, do send us an email.
And we're at untamedterrainpod@gmail.com. We'll post some links for you down in our bio, and let you comment on what you liked, what you don't like. And as Lori said, you know, any ideas that you may have or things that work for you, for your children, or family members even on social media, and things that they've been kind of taken to an extreme. So anyway, give us a follow and give us a like, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye.